The iconic landscapes of the Scottish Highlands are a magnet for tourists from around the world. They come to see what has been referred to as Europe's last great wilderness. The land is wild, but it is not wilderness. To claim that it is to betray the long history of management of the land and its occupation by people of many cultures and origins over past millennia. The modern landscape reflects this history, as do aspirations for its future management. These aspirations differ among the people and communities of Scotland, and of the Highlands in particular. Conservationists look back at Scotland's remote past and reflect on ancient Caledonian pine forests that have been denuded and lost over the ages. Their vision for the Highlands is one in which native woodlands are restored and are once again a haven for wildcat, white-tailed eagles, red squirrels and other native wildlife.
The area here is Coiga and Assens, the northwest Highlands of Scotland, across two counties, the county of Sutherland and county of Russia, an area of about 600 square kilometres in total. The habitats of the area here are really a product of the underlying geology. I guess the main habitats are the moorland and submontane habitats. There's woodland in some areas, and that's a major habitat that a project will look to address and create, well, try and encourage more woodland generation through direct planting and assistance with regeneration as well. Coastal habitats, crofting landscape that's been a result of subsistence agriculture for the last few centuries.
Others recognise the need to grow and diversify the Highland economy to benefit local communities by investing in tourism, commercial forestry, renewable energy generation and farming. Yet forestry relies on exotic timber trees that have less value for wildlife, while the infrastructure of energy generation does not blend well with wild landscapes.
This is Achnacellich Forest. This is one of our forest holdings we have in Wester Ross in the northwest of Scotland. In the background behind us is Sloch Moor, which is one of the core pinewood areas in Achnacellich. It's one of the most iconic areas of pinewood that we have in the north of Scotland. The forest itself, Achnacellich, was largely managed as a commercial forest up until 10 years ago, in the last decade, where we started native woodland restoration process on the south side of the river. We intend to manage it mainly as a commercial native woodland with large areas of non-intervention woodland along the riparian zones. Long term, in the southern part of Achnacellich, we're looking to revert this area back to native woodland. We want to restore Caledonian pinewood back to its natural extent within the forest. We want to restore native riparian woodland along the course of the River Carron, which flows within the lower margins of the forest. The most challenging part of my job really would be, for each new forest design plan, land management plan that I engage on, is getting to really know the forest and getting to understand what the priorities and key actions are for the area. It takes quite a long time to build up the social background, the historic background, and get a real idea of what the key features and the special important features of each forest are, and how to link our future management of this with national policy as well.
Crofting is a traditional small-scale farming system unique to the Highlands. It is also a way of life that binds communities together through shared labour and experiences. Crofters have rights to graze their sheep and cattle on extensive but privately owned estates.
There's various definitions for a croft. One is that it's a small bit of land surrounded by legislation, and certainly there's plenty of legislation in crofting, but it's best described by saying it's a small agricultural unit of various sizes. Some crofts are very small, others say half an acre. Others can be up to 25-50 acres, but associated with most crofts you get an area of what's called common grazing that surrounds the croft area, and some of that common grazings can be of a significant size. The one here at Coolags, for instance, that I'm on, there's 1,000 acres of common grazing to go with 5 acres of croft land. There isn't much interaction between the landlords and the tenants, except perhaps if we've got a dispute. And thankfully we don't have much dispute with Major Wills. The crofters and the landowners have landlords have a responsibility to each other, and that should be recognised. Both have responsibilities to ensure that the crofting land is worked sustainably, and we are both custodians of the land. I don't know how much the landscape has changed since I was a young fella here, but I do know it has changed. There's more trees in it, there's more bracken, which is unfortunate because that's just a pest of a weed. The heather is probably a bit more rank than it was when I was young, which is a pity. But if you burn the heather, there used to be a lot of heather burning when I was young on this area and also in surrounding townships. But that is more difficult now because the more forestry there are around us, the more difficult it is really to burn and keep control of the burning. Sometimes it goes out of control, it can do damage to afforestation or other important bits of ground that are around.
British and foreign tourists pay good money to hunt red deer on the large private estates. Estate owners therefore favour large deer populations. Too many deer, however, limits the regeneration of native woodland or the establishment of commercial forests, and so foresters and conservationists shoot deer that wander onto their lands. This is not appreciated by the sporting estates, who generate income from hunting. Meanwhile, heather burning by crofters to improve grazing also threatens regenerating forests and plantations.
My everyday job is forestry consultancy. That could involve everything from buying a woodland to selling a woodland, from planting a tree to felling a tree, every part of forest management. Usually working for private individuals, but I do work for government agencies, particularly the Scottish Natural Heritage, SSE. People think that tree planting is straight lines, plenty of them, and it's very easy. Well, native woodland establishments is a lot more different, a lot more diverse and a lot more challenging. A private estate owner would want to re-establish a native woodland. The main reason to provide shelter. What they want to do is recreate the past. We've got a few remnant woodlands left in Scotland. They want to produce more of the same. It's good for the habitat, it's good for the environment. I have to be honest, it's grant driven. The government are pushing harder than the landowners. They've made a grant available, which means they can plant the trees at little or no cost to themselves. The benefits is it costs them nothing and they get wonderful shelter and a very lovely landscape to live amongst. The shelter is mainly for all the wildlife, but particularly red deer. Red deer shooting in Scotland is a very, very important sport, and landowners do spend an awful lot of money to maintain the herds in good quality. Native woodland is it shelters them. If they're sheltered, it means they overwinter better, they need less food to survive. So it's a perfect environment for the red deer. The private owner can manage the deer on these estates by two methods. In localised areas, i.e. where they are trying to establish native woodlands, they can use a deer fence. Very simple, 6 foot high deer fence, and it keeps the deer out most of the time. The other way is by shooting. Usually when you're establishing native woodlands, you do it with a fence because it's a surefire way of protecting the crop and making sure that the government are not disappointed when you take the grants. The estate owners want high deer numbers because it improves the sport. It improves the value of the estate and gives them a lot more opportunities when it comes to culling beast, to taking guests out, making more money. And also it helps with the selection process. The more deer they have, the easier it is for them to select the better deer and keep them and weed out the poor ones.
In seeking to manage this landscape, we need to draw on the knowledge and resources of foresters and estate managers, stalkers and crofters, non-government and governmental organisations, and of course, scientists and conservationists. Above all, however, management will only ever be successful if the people living and working in the region are involved in decision-making.
The Living Landscape Project has a range of stakeholders. There are 13 organisations in total, 7 of which are landowning organisations, some private landowners, some community landowners, some charitable landowners. In addition, there's local interest groups and community development companies involved as well. The aims of the partnership are to bring about habitat restoration and broad environmental benefits, but also crucially making sure that there are social and economic benefits to the people that live and work in the area, and really placing people at the heart of the landscape and recognising the role that landscape and people have had in one interacting with the other over the years. And a project that's really truly collaborative in that way is the ideal.
We use a collaborative approach, and from working with myself and other members of the district team, we use a lot of local knowledge that's been built up over the Forest District over the last 20 to 30 years. We do a lot of engagement with stakeholders as well to try and develop priorities, and we link back into national strategic directions in the Scottish Forest Strategy to develop our objectives. We engage stakeholders through a variety of methods. For Achnashelach, the development of the plan here, we had 2 drop-in sessions with the public where members of the community were invited to come along and comment on our proposals for the woodland and give us information on what they would like to see in terms of the future management. We had a secondary visit with the community as well, where we took them on a field visit to explain our proposals in further detail, which was a really rewarding experience for us. We managed to get a lot of information that we wouldn't otherwise have had from it, and hopefully we'll be able to develop a forest which not only meets our aspirations but the aspirations of the wider community as well.
Recognising the existence of diverse community aspirations is a first step towards building trust among actors, which is itself a necessary condition for sustainable land management. At its heart, ecosystem management is about recognising the validity of alternative perspectives and working alongside communities and agencies for mutually beneficial outcomes. Yet differing aspirations create conflicting interests. Solutions are rarely obvious, and conflicts arise all too easily. The land that we, as visitors, think of as wild is shaped by decisions made by local communities of crofters, estate owners, foresters and conservationists. These decisions are sometimes negotiated and agreed, and sometimes not. Understanding this gives us a deeper appreciation of the landscapes of the Scottish Highlands as being, somewhat paradoxically, both wild and managed, but certainly not wilderness.